Hello and welcome to Alberta Live. I'm your host, Sunita Kolzuchi, and with me here at Fuse Logic Studio is the tallest member of the Legislative Assembly of Alberta, Doug Elniski.
Hi.
Doug Elniski represents Edmonton-Calder. He also serves as member of the Cabinet Policy Committee on Resources and the Environment, and he's deputy chair of the Alberta Heritage Savings Trust Fund Committee. He's also a member of the Special Standing Committee on Member Services and the Standing Committee on Public Accounts. Mr. Elniski, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Sunita.
And we're going to talk about a host of issues. We're going to talk about you. We are going to talk most of all about your party. And I think there's a feeling out there that your party is going through bad days. 40 years, that's a bit too much. And people think that it's in a mess.
Well, I don't know that 40 years is, 40 years is just a number. It's not, I turned 50 this year. And so, the party has been around for a long time. It's been around as long as, certainly I can remember. But it's not necessarily been the same group of people or really even the same organization. I think it's fair to say that there's been a number of iterations over that particular period of time. 40 years to me is it's a number.
But do you and your colleagues at the Conservative Party, do they think that it is in a mess, the province at least?
Well, there's a number of fronts to look at that particular question on. You look at it you can talk about it politically, you can talk about it, economically. Alberta, frankly, it's the economic engine of Canada, if not arguably of the Americas right now, certainly of North America. We have a lot of advantages here that, frankly, people don't have in a lot of other places. Our net in-migration says that people want to come here and they want to live here. So we have some internal politics and we play inside baseball on a few things. But really overall, I think that the current state of affairs in the province of Alberta is pretty good compared to a lot of other places.
Okay, so we'll not move on. We'll just look at some of the newspaper reports that we've been scanning
Sure.
the newspapers and keeping an ear to the ground.
Okay.
This is what people say. Political turmoil. A province once regarded as the most politically stable, if not authoritarian regime in Canada, due to its oil wealth, now looks like one unpredictable mess with rising political dissent from all quarters. So, to most Albertans, Mr. Stelmach's departure is but a reminder that the ship is indeed sinking. Is it?
Oh, I don't agree with that at all. I think that if you look across the country right now, and you look at for example, what's occurred to the west, in British Columbia with respect to the leadership issues that they had there, and you look at what's gone on in a number of the provinces down east, they've had similar yet different types of problems. You can't say that it's one particular thing that is at effect here. We've just come out of the worst recession since frankly, the Great Depression of the 1930s. And Alberta's the only province that's come out of it unscathed. But we have nonetheless come out of it a little bit bruised. But, we have not come out of it with any debt. And, but people don't like uncertainty. People don't like, they don't enjoy the flux, so to speak. But overall, we've actually come out of it pretty good. I don't particularly agree with that statement at all.
Well, your party is in the middle of a healthcare crisis. 40 years, you just can't say that it's some other party that did it. 40 years is a continuous period of time for policy issues to take effect.
Yeah.
You have a lot of things going on as far as healthcare failure goes. Would you agree it's a failure, or do you think that too?
I absolutely do not agree that it's a failure. I have very strong opinions about that, and I will give you, as most people do, I'll give you two anecdotal examples. So my grandson, Dominic, who is just turning 3, does what many little boys do and bounces on the bed when he's not supposed to, and does also what many little boys do and fell off the bed. And went into the hospital, went to the Royal Alec, one of the busiest emergency wards in the country, went in there last Thursday night about 8 o'clock and got absolutely fabulous time and attention from the nurses, walked out the door with 5 stickers, and, he was home at 11 o'clock.
Fantastic. That's great. However, that does not camouflage the real issues within, that you're pumping 40 to 50% of provincial budget and the federal budget into the healthcare system.
Yeah.
Okay, and after the furor, if people are getting a better service, fantastic, it better be so, because you are in an election year. But that does not cover the real issue here, unless you want to say there is no problem there.
No, I'm not prepared. I'm certainly not prepared to say that. But there's a difference between the problem that's viewed as the media circus and in fact some of the systemic issues that occur on the ground. There's no question that healthcare expenditures are eating everybody's lunch. In the province of Alberta, and we're pretty well off, but in the province of Alberta, between what we spend on healthcare, what we spend on education, what we spend on advanced education, and what we spend on seniors and community supports, so 4 areas of expenditure that people have said is absolutely critical to us.
So
we spend we spend about 78% of the provincial budget on those 4 areas, and so you either have to say to yourself, well, are there services that you don't want to deliver, which people have very clearly come out and said that they don't want to talk about that. Or do you simply look to maintain alternative forms of revenue? We're pretty lucky on the operating side in Alberta. We're not running at deficits. We're running our deficits on the capital expenditure side, so we're doing pretty good there. But you can't argue that healthcare is not the biggest cost that we and every other jurisdiction faces.
Well, 40% of the budget is quite a bit. And second issue is that there is no leadership there to actually take on some of the issues that are facing you. For instance, even if you look at the doctor problem, you look at some of the infrastructure problem, there's nothing to show up there.
Well, I think that the movement to one single board, to Alberta Health Services, was the right decision. And the challenge with those particular types of things is that you don't, in a province the size of Alberta, need health regions where every region runs a different set of purchasing and a different set of health records management and a different payroll system and a different accounts payable system and those kinds of things. All of those are non-healthcare related service delivery issues, and completely they work better under the large sort of dynamic that they have. Where they're having the struggle right now, and I think that the new, the staff that are involved are out, everybody's trying really hard. The struggle they have now is understanding what everybody's role is in the new model and making sure that they're actually delivering at the efficiencies that they're supposed to. But they're all trying very hard.
Okay, I'll come back to that later.
Okay.
But first, what's happening within your own party? As an outsider, what I feel and what appears to everybody else is that there's some kind of a squabble going on for the leadership of this party. Mm-hmm. Every day we're hearing somebody or the other is putting in his or her name.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I don't think that the run for leadership is over by a long shot. I mean, ultimately, the leadership of the party is for many people as the big prize. I'm not running for leader though, just in case you're wondering. And the reason the reason a lot of people are is because a lot of people feel that that's the next logical step for them. I mean, at this moment in time, we have Ted Morton and Gary Marr and Doug Horner and Alison Redford and Doug Griffiths. So we have 5 people who have all entered the race today. I don't honestly think that we're done yet. I think that there's at least 1, maybe 2 more inside people that are going to come on board, and there may be 1 or 2 outside people that are going to come on board.
So do you want to tell us who it is going to be next? Who's going to say me too?
Oh, I don't know for sure. There's a lot of speculation about a lot of different people.
Well, what to you does it mean that there are so many people who are actually so keen to say me? It's like a kindergarten race. It's the candy is there. You got to just run for it.
Well, I think ultimately what it means is that the prize has value. I think really that's the case. I mean, let's go look at a couple of the other political parties that are doing the same kind of thing right now. So we have the official opposition, who are also in the middle of a leadership race and who have just only recently now had a second contender come forward, and we have the new party, the Alberta Party, who has just recently come forward, and I don't know that they have 2 candidates for those jobs. Do they?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure that they actually had. So the difference between the 2, though, I think is when you look at becoming the leader of the Progressive Conservative Party, there's a very significant organization that exists there. This is a very significant structure, and it's a party that yields very, very good results. It's obviously got some value to people, or they wouldn't be willing to go for it.
So what do you think the outcome is going to be? Predictable, unpredictable? Do you think the PCs are being hemmed in from all sides now? The opposition is really, if I may use the slang, gunning for you. Would you think so?
Oh, yeah, we're a big target.
They're strategizing.
Well, they're strategizing.
And so are you.
You betcha.
There seems to be a method behind the madness. So many leaders coming out.
Well, I don't know that there's a whole bunch of strategy around the number of leaders that are coming forward specifically, but I think that the hearts and minds of Albertans ultimately are won by fiscal conservatism and social pragmatism, I think is probably the best way to put it. And that's what people want. There's a very big difference that we must never forget in the province between those people who play the political game and those people who don't. And we refer to it as inside baseball. So if you're playing the political game, then you're a stats master and you're keeping track of everything. If you're not playing the political game, if you're too busy working to play the political game, and fortunately a lot of people are, then what it really comes down to is, does my kid have a school? If I need to get in and go see the doctor, can I make that thing happen? Keep my taxes where I can afford them. When are you going to get 63 twins so I can get to work? And those are really where a lot of people's hearts and minds are.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about. I think the PCs are getting, I think they're out of touch. Not me, but I think what the general public feels, and I've been talking to some people and reading, you guys seem to be out of touch. Pardon my colloquial style of interviewing you today, but I think that's the only way I can make you understand that the PCs are not in touch with what's happening around them. This is the same Alberta, which once upon a time had social credit party.
Yeah.
So are you underestimating the strength of the mood for change within this province? Are you underestimating it?
No, you should never, ever underestimate the strength of mood for change. And to do that is sort of feeds into the criticism of the arrogance, and I'm not going to argue with that with people saying.
So what are you doing to change yourself? I mean, changing one person with another with another.
Mm-hmm.
What's the cataclysmic change within the party thinking that is going to happen to get you back to where you were?
I would natura non facit saltum, which is Latin for nature does not leap, and I think that cataclysmic change, while is exciting, and I don't know necessarily that it brings about results that you anticipate all the time. And again, when people want to have their services delivered to them, and they want to have a wide variety of issues that they want their issues addressed. And they will elect and they will support those representatives that either A, have in the past been able to deliver those particular things, or who they believe in their heart of hearts and in their best minds will be able to deliver those things. In the case of Alberta, the Progressive Conservative Party has been successful in doing that for 40 years. But the Progressive Conservative Party of today is not the same Progressive Conservative Party of, Peter Lougheed in 1971. It's quite different, actually. And we're very much aware, and I mean, this technology discussion we're having today and the fact that we're live on the internet it suggests that we're in a different era. It's impossible to do something now and not have it be known virtually instantaneously. And it doesn't matter where it is. I mean, we're watching, the events unfold in Japan, for example, in nuclear power plants at a rate of knowledge that was unheard of in 1979 with 3 Mile Island. And it's a very, very short period of time and a huge amount of change and a huge amount of data. And, it's difficult to keep track. It's difficult to know where it is you go, what media do you pay attention to, what resources do you garner and bring in front of you, because every decision you make now is so quickly scrutinized. And that's neither fish nor fowl. That's not a fair or unfair thing. But it's really interesting how quickly you get reactions and responses to things that go on, and how you. But you can't manage policy that way.
I'm going to catch you on that first point about your Latin phrase, and I don't know. I strongly, and a lot of people would back that up. The theory of deconstruction. That sometimes you just got to snap everything out of shape, deconstruct everything, and then reconstruct again. And I think people are, to a certain extent, feeling that the time for Alberta has come in for the deconstruction theory to take place. Having said that, where would you say has been your best policy success? I mean, by you, I mean the PC party.
But overall, by the PC party?
Yeah.
Well, ultimately, I think that the unquestionable largest success of the party has had overall in terms of the impact on the lives of the average person who lives in the province. And really, that's where we care about at the end of the day. Has to do with economic policy with regard to resource extraction. We do a very, very good job in this province of extracting resources. We also, interestingly, do a very, very good job of building the tools necessary to extract resources. Sometimes that works good for us, sometimes not so much. For example, the price of natural gas right now is under $4 an MCF, which is virtually uneconomic to go drill a new well in our environment because of all the amount of shale gas that's been brought in on the United States. Shale gas that's been talked about since the mid-1970s that got brought on because of technology that we developed. So
yeah,
we did it, and then we did it, and we built it, and we
that's
exported
exactly why people are up in arms against you guys. I mean, pardon my saying so.
Well, I mean, we did. The government didn't.
Shale gas or natural gas is a precious commodity.
Sure it is.
Fantastic commodity. It should be priced more than a lot better than what it is. The anger out there is it's being used to feed, oil sands, and clean fuel is being wasted to produce, as people call it, the tar sand oil. So that's precisely the kind of muddle up in policy issues. Your party is not coming clean on. They're not being able to communicate what their policy is going to be on these kind of issues.
Well, you know what, and I don't agree that that's a failure. I don't agree that our stand on these issues is a failure, and I'm very certain that every person in this province who is involved in that industry or who in some way benefits from those particular industries are better off because of it. I mean, that's, when you have a resource that's as valuable as Alberta's resource, and frankly as controversial as Alberta's resources. I mean, it's, you call it tar sands, I call it oil sands, tomato kind of thing. It's a different slants on the same thing. The fact of the matter is we're in a hydrocarbon-hungry world. And with emerging markets in Asia, Southeast Asia, India, all these coming online with the demands that those people have now in China, suddenly we have we have 1 billion plus people in the world that are saying, wait a minute, I too really want to be middle class.
Yeah.
And so they are looking for the same things that you and I have. You and I have, to the vast majority of people in this world, inexplicable amounts of wealth. I mean, we're sitting in a room here full of technology that to most people is just an unbelievable thing. And yet, for some reason, we look at that like it's either, people say it's either not enough, we need something else, or there's some inherent dissatisfaction with it. We got it really good here. You're very, very hard-pressed to go any place else in the world that does not have it as well as this does. And I dare say that 40 years of consistent fiscal governance is by and large, because Saskatchewan right next door has got exactly the same resources. In fact, Saskatchewan's got more resources than we do. If you look at it, Saskatchewan we should be the poor sister to Saskatchewan. But 40 years of very, very consistent economic development in this province has paid off.
That's right.
Yeah.
But Saskatchewan is a competitor too.
Oh, they are now.
We talked about it. I want to get back. I'm going to come back to this is an issue that's very close to my heart, the oil revenue, and we'll come back to it.
Okay.
We'll come back to it. But first, let me ask you: the question is Mr. Stelmach's departure a story of rank incompetence or revolt, or both, or was there an et tu Brutus involved? What's the real story here?
Well, you see, you phrased the question as, was it like rank incompetence, or what was the second thing you said? The rank incompetence.
This is not me. This is not me.
I know. But
just the et tu Brutus part is mine. The rest is what.
And here's kind of the deal on that one. Okay, so Premier Stelmach has been an elected official in the province of Alberta for 25 years. He has dedicated his life to public service for 25 years. And he's been paid every day that he goes to work. That's like we all do in this business. He's not doing it for free, but he's been a dedicated civil servant, dedicated leader for 25 years, right? And so his decision to step down ultimately was a decision that he made with his family with respect to what he saw going on around him. I don't I don't want to speak to what the dividing motion was there, but he was not driven out. We didn't get together and drive him out, but he reached the point where people I believe it was the Calgary Herald had an editorial cartoon where they painted him to look like Schultz from Hogan's Heroes. And the Premier's sister lives in Calgary, and she's quite a bit older than he is. I think she's in her early 80s, actually. And his family are constant. It's not just him. It's his family are constantly barraged by this stuff. And at some point in time, you got to ask yourself the question is to say, well, when is enough?
So is politics dirty in Alberta? You have people like David Swan, who's a gentleman, and he's out of politics. I mean, he's out of the party as well. I shouldn't say out of politics, but I don't know what his plan is. Yeah. So here you are. What's happening there? 40 years and politics is so dirty. Who do you attribute that to?
Well, I contributed a lot of that to some of the things you talked about earlier. For example, I think that we're really getting into a time now, where we came out of a major recession. There's a lot more pressure, a lot more examination. There's a lot more immediacy on virtually everything that everybody does now, and you have to be so conscious that you almost appear guarded as to how you do things, which then is interpreted as a lack of action because you're suddenly guarded because you're subject to scrutiny and all these other kind of things that are going on simultaneously. There's no real one big crux to the whole issue. Dr. Swan is an honorable guy. He's, said a bunch of stuff in the legislature this last week that, it's his opinion on the facts, but it's not necessarily the facts. But his job is not to support the government, nor is the Wild Rose, nor is the NDP, nor is Mr. Taylor. Their job as opposition members is to oppose the government, to offer an alternative perspective to the perspective that we have. And I'll tell you that we as backbench MLAs, and I'm kind of in kind of a fun section of the House where we actually are, we're pretty aggressive where we are, and but we do listen very carefully to what other people have to say. They might not think so, because obviously we don't do what they want because we're the government, we have our own perspective. We get in that whole they're there to oppose us, but we do listen very carefully to what they have to say.
So do you think it's a failure of communication, or what do you attribute the negativity that is there against the PC party now?
Well, some of that has to do, I think, with issues of communication for sure. Some of that has to do with issues of insecurity. When people are nervous about their livelihoods and then they're nervous about the access to care, or they're nervous about something else, and they're obviously looking for some place for it to go, right? Looking for some place for it to be blamed on. And I mean, frankly, in fairness, we're the right target. We're where it belongs.
And do you think it's also to do with the new generation of leaders? Let me draw your attention to a well-written piece in Maclean's. Okay. It talks about the frozen in time Quebec political scenario. The reference being, I guess, to the decades-old debate of Quebec's socio-political identity, now cracking up and giving way to a wave of new questioning in a different direction. The question of financial structures layered over the debris of eternal angst. Sorry, I think I've got it wrong here. Quebec, let me ask you the question straight off. Let me not read that.
Okay.
Let me ask you the question straight off. The dialogue in Quebec is changing. It was the angst over identity that preoccupied Quebec. Suddenly, there's this crack in the financial well-being of even a wealthy country like Canada. Let's not forget Europe. Let's not forget the US. So is the questioning now from angst to the personal identity bit going to financial, what's happening? We're not doing as well as we thought we were doing. Is that what's happening?
Well, to some extent, but I mean, a lot of this is natural. But some things have occurred in the last like, I don't know, 15, 20 years. René Lévesque was relevant in, like, when I was a kid in the 70s, right? And we were all afraid that Quebec was going to separate, and school children were phoning, their home phone numbers in that area code to tell people not to leave, and all those kinds of things were occurring. And I remember the referendum, the vote was extremely close. That's not an issue for the current generation of people that are there. I mean, Canada has, as a country, undergone a phenomenal and tremendously positive change overall. I mean, even the, I refer to it in conversation all the time as the new face of Canada. In my constituency of Edmonton-Calder, I have the Africa Centre, I have the Jamaica Centre, I have the Dutch Canadian Club, I have the Polish Society, I have the Ukrainian dance troupe. And when you look at all of these things together, I mean, the old sort of traditional kind of Anglo-Saxon perspective on the world probably doesn't resonate with a lot of people anymore. And I understand that, but their opportunity to come in is there as well.
I took the example of Quebec because the focus there is shifting, and so is it in Alberta.
Oh, yeah, clearly.
So perhaps, there is, as I was talking about, a younger generation of leaders like Danielle Smith. And again, I'd like to quote, I would like to quote the magazine. The Maclean's, it says that Albertans are fed up with the big spending machine politics that your party represents. Danielle Smith has injected glamour, charisma into the deadpan politics of this province. And how do you think this will affect your party?
Well, I think that ultimately in Alberta, as is in any other jurisdiction in the country, I think that, Jean Chrétien sent Preston Manning a Christmas card every year for many years because having two parties representing what is essentially the same political ideology is a recipe for vote splitting, frankly, and that was what happened. Chrétien formed three majority Liberal governments essentially based on that particular thing at the federal level. In Alberta, there is within the progressive conservative movement itself, or in the conservative movement itself, a whole lot of different aspects of opinion and perspective. We have a political party, frankly, that has a broad enough tent that the Honourable Dave Hancock and then at the time the Honourable Ted Morton could stand up on stage together and sing Kumbaya, and there's room for both of those perspectives in the same room, right? We have. As you just look at the demographic, for example, of the internal of the party, it's pretty representative of Alberta. And, we have, Danielle Smith not in particular, but we got a lot of other people that are at least as much horsepower, if not more. Yeah,
but the challenge to the Conservatives is being able to have Dave Hancock and Mr. Ted Morton sing that song now, in times of crisis. Yeah. But that's where the real strength or the real metamorphosis from a nascent to a developed ideological framework for a party is. But why is it not happening now? You are a mature party. You're not kindergarten kids. Well, so why is this, or is it just a political strategy that you want to push Mr. Ted Morton ahead as the fiscal conservative? And then, of course, you have a woman to oppose. There is a sense in what's happening there. You have a woman. So the women voters, and you have. Are you playing demographics, and are you playing segment politics?
Personally, absolutely.
I mean, as a political, as a party, what are you trying to do? Make it worse out there? Make the politics more intricate and more complicated, and
Well, no. The best analogy I can give for you. Okay, so you take your glass of water and you put your finger in a glass of water. Pull your finger out of the glass of water. The water goes all over the place, but it settles back out to equilibrium, right? So disruption is always or sort of discourse is always a temporary thing. I mean, it's very big and dramatic at the moment, but ultimately it resolves itself back to its level, to whatever its natural level is. In terms of Alberta politics today, I don't have any sort of soothsayer guru perspective on the world to know what equilibrium is, but I do believe that equilibrium with respect to the Wild Rose Alliance and with respect to the Progressive Conservative Party, and then for example on the sort of center left with the Liberal Party and the Alberta Party and whatever that turns out to be, and I guess the NDP sort of are the own sort of little bastion of a clear identity. I don't have any doubt in my mind what, that these things will sort themselves out in the fullness of time, because it's about the amount of effort and energy that people are prepared to invest in an ideology. People do not vote for ideologies. And if you are an ideologue, as there are some people who make a lot of noise in the House today, I would classify them as, you have to be really careful, because while people will they'll support an ideology, but they may not support the entire ideology. I have people in my constituency who come from every possible angle in the perspective of a continuum of whatever it is that they believe. And my job as an elected official is to talk to them all. So too it is with a political party.
So where do you see it heading? Where do you see it?
I don't think that the Progressive Conservative Party or the Progressive Conservative Movement, as we see it today, is. I think that there's a lot of rhetoric. I think that there's a lot of noise. But frankly, I don't think that it's in jeopardy. I think that if we do as MLAs the job that our constituents ask us to do, we'll get reelected. If we as MLAs don't do the job our constituents ask us to do, we won't. And at the end of the day, it's pretty simple. Like, if my constituents do not like what I do, they will not vote for me. And that translates not only for myself, but that also translates up into my party and my premier. It's the same thing all both sides of the perspective.
But some would argue that you're losing the core, the conservatives, because of the alternative that's there now. You've lost some MLAs too. Do you see more of these transitions going ahead?
Yeah, no, I don't. I look at the MLAs that have chosen to cross the floor, and that's fine. That was a decision for them, and it's based on whatever they felt was the best thing for them to do at the time. In terms of support, there are certainly some issues. There are some people that have bones to pick, and what they need to see is they need to be reassured that in fact the Progressive Conservative Party, or our party, is dealing with their issues. And if we do, they'll come back. If we don't, they won't.
Okay, let's move away from party politics.
Oh, okay. I like it so much. Okay.
Let's move on to personal questions. Okay. I was reading this reader comment to an article, and it had mentioned you, and it said, Mr. Stelmach must have told him, that's you, to show some loyalty. After all, it was Mr. Stelmach that bought him his seat. Mr. Elinsky was probably reminded of the large retirement package he'll get. He's also to remember that his only job is to attend PC fundraising events.
Really?
Is that true? Are you the official fundraiser for the provincial PCs?
Oh man, if I'm the official fundraiser of the PC party, we are in serious trouble. We really are. That's entertaining, but that's not really true. No, that isn't true at all. I think if the premier had bought me my seat in the last election, I think I would have asked him to spend a few extra bucks and get me more than a 200 vote win. And wore out 2 pairs of shoes door knocking, which really ultimately is why I think we won the race. No, I have no idea. I think that might be a perspective. Well, I mean, and I am at every PC function that there is virtually. But again, it's the same thing. You raise money as an elected official, both at the party level and at the constituency level. At the constituency level, because that's what your election campaign consists of. Right? At the party level, you have to keep the organization itself afloat. And everybody participates now, but I'm not the bag man for the party.
So have you hooked on...
I'd be a lot better off if I was with it.
Have you hooked on your carriage onto Mr. Ted Morton's bandwagon? Is that true? You're having breakfast galas in your constituency.
Well, again, I don't know that I would call it a breakfast gala. We had Ted for breakfast yesterday.
Yeah.
Because last year when he was finance minister, we had St. Patrick's Day with Ted Morton, the finance minister. Yeah. We sold basically the same number of tickets as we did this year. Well, we liked the event so much that we decided we were going to keep it. So we had booked with Ted last year to have the same event. And, of course, as you know, in January, Ted stopped being finance minister, and he became, an independent backbench MLA who then decided he was going to run for the leader of the party. And that's fine. So we kept the event for him for a bunch of different reasons, but also because I thought it would be interesting for people to talk to him. But we've also, on April 11th, we've got Doug Horner coming in for a breakfast, and every candidate that there is going to come to my constituency and talk to my constituents. They've all thrown their hats in the ring, and as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to work them all like rented mules, and they're all going to produce something for me.
Okay. Yeah. Since you don't have a horse right now to lead the carriage, let it be mules.
Okay, well, mules are fine.
Mules are hardworking.
They are.
Okay, now let's move on. And the issue of policy. A report from the reputed C.V. Howe Institute talks about Alberta's fluctuating revenue base and how that makes it impossible to carry out long-term plans. It also undermines ability to forecast and manage revenues, and I read from the report, government revenue volatility can have important negative consequences. The two provinces most heavily reliant on volatile energy revenues, Alberta and Saskatchewan, have the worst records of hitting budget targets. Revenue volatility also makes it more difficult for the private sector to predict future government tax and spending policies, which could have important consequences for private sector investment decisions. What do you have to say about it? You're still, despite all this, I just was going through the Hansard, and there was a debate on energy, and I think the energy minister said that he was boasting about the increase in revenues and how Alberta would be right there back with all the deficits gone because of high revenue. You're still hitching your you're still playing the energy card.
There can be no question. I mean, ultimately, Alberta is a hydrocarbon-driven economy, and whatever we consider our response to the hydrocarbon question ultimately is where we're at. Given that, however, we have in Alberta, we have a very robust agricultural sector, we have a very robust forestry sector, and we have some absolutely fascinating new and upcoming and new and growing technology sectors. I've heard the commentary about these other issues for a long time, and it's never going to be, okay, we're just going to go away from this hydrocarbon-based economy, and tomorrow we're going to become sustainable, and we're going to do something else, right? And because you have to go from there to there, and we're making that journey. Some of the we talked a little bit earlier about shale gas and the horizontal drilling technology for shale gas. On the medical side, some of the most advanced stuff that's going on in terms of healthcare research is going on right here. They have these nanocrystalline cellulose technology. You may not remember this from when you were a kid, but there used to be a book out there called Dune. And the guys behind the computers probably read this stuff. And it talked about these spaceships that these guys, these like vehicles these guys had, and they grew them. They called them organics, right? Nanocrystalline cellulose technology is so good in terms of nanotechnology that they can actually virtually grow objects using this particular technology. Just absolutely space-age, stellar, and fantastic stuff. And it happened right here. I know I don't play video games. We have a 350-person Edmonton, or 350-person organization in Edmonton that manufactures what I'm told are some pretty high-end video games. It's very, very popular. It's remarkable how diverse the economy is. And appropriately so, frankly, because the interests and the willingness of people coming into the workforce now are quite a bit different than they were, when I got out of school, which was like 30 years ago now. So.
But still, you are dependent on revenues from the oil sector.
And frankly, for a long time to come, I think.
So do you think that's a lack of direction again for the province, or
no? You have to. I think that ultimately, the world demand dictates that that's where we need to be in terms of the product itself. We have to extract the resource because the market demand is there for the resource. What we need to do as a government, and it's really hard in government. You don't want to be picking winners and losers. So you don't want to say, "Oh yeah, I think your industry is going to be successful and your industry is going to fail," because typically you get that wrong for a whole bunch of different reasons. So you have to let a lot of these things occur sort of organically, as it were. Industries have to grow, and they have to prosper, and they have to develop. We have lots of things that have occurred here that have done well, other things that have occurred here that have failed. But in terms of the amount of money that people invest in Alberta and R&D and different technologies to do different things, we're pretty robust. We do well.
Okay, I'll get back to the health issue. You presented some papers in the Assembly. Was it 2 days back or 3 days back? And I want to play a clip of, you were talking about Wild Rose Alliance and one of the health shadow health minister's involvement in an international hospital.
Oh yes, okay.
So
okay,
I would
sure.
What's going on there? This seems to be a deeper issue than what meets the eye. What's going on there?
Well, there's a couple of things at play there. First of all,
do you want us to listen to the clip
oh, yeah,
first?
go, yeah, play the clip.
So that the viewers...
Comes up to you and says, hey, I think we have the same DNA. So when I remember the third party long ago, I didn't really think very much about it. As events unfolded, however, I began to wonder how someone could possibly know a person's DNA unless they had access to some pretty advanced medical technology. It turns out that one of the finest places on earth to get such information is the Canadian International Hospital in Hanoi, Vietnam. Now, this is a 5-star facility. This 200-bed luxury hospital, fully staffed with Canadian physicians, operates the most modern diagnostic and treatment facilities, including patented DNA sequencing technologies. Now, I've never been to Hanoi, but clearly there must be some link here. So I was not surprised to learn that the chairman of this facility, this private for-profit luxury hospital that caters to the seriously rich sick people, happens to be none other than a well-known doctor, former cabinet minister, and recently proclaimed Wild Rose policy advisor on health. The Canadian International Hospital, which sounds more like a resort than a hospital, has the finest, most modern facilities. I am particularly impressed by the accommodations for the 30 Canadian physicians who will move to Hanoi. I mean, so long as you have a surplus of doctors in Alberta, how can the loss of 30 really matter? Of course, it does translate into about 200,000 canceled appointments per year over here, but really, who's complaining? You can skid in a seat.
So what's the allegation there? What, I mean, I know what you're trying to say, but could you elaborate what is...
Well, you know, it is, I think, disingenuous. And the reason that I made the member statement was the first reason was that the leader of the third party had been on the radio that morning. Actually, I think it was on Monday, maybe it was. Been on the radio that particular day and had said on a fairly popular open line talk show that, you know, we're chronically short of physicians in the province of Alberta, and, you know, we're dealing with this issue. And then at the same point in time, their own policy advisor on this particular matter is in fact invested with another former MLA and a couple of other guys in what is marketed as a just absolutely fabulous world-class facility overseas. Now, it's not the only overseas hospital that is owned and operated by Albertans, and I know that. I'm not, you know, I'm not naive to suggest that it is, but it is a little disingenuous for somebody to come forward and say, "Oh, you're not doing a good job of keeping, you know, giving people access to general practitioner physicians when you come and you want to take 30 of them and send them to Hanoi." So.
But, you know, there are serious allegations against the PC party. This whole issue of mental illness, it's getting to some people.
Yeah.
What's the story there? Why is all this happening?
Well, you know, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Why do you think this... is there no better way to attack people than this?
Well, the PC party itself has never attacked anyone and said anything with respect to mental illness. There are people who have, in and amongst themselves, made some allegations about that sort of thing. You know, most of these issues, and issues of performance particularly, are employment issues. So if someone comes forward and says, you know, you fired me because fill in the blanks, right? If you say that as an employee, as the employer, I have no way of responding to that publicly because the information that led up to whatever decision we made is confidential.
But it's the sneaky way that it's done that can destroy a person's career, life, everything. You know?
But I'm not so sure that it has. I'm not so sure. There's three sides. I mean, ultimately, there's three sides to every story. But in these particular instances, the only individual who has really, frankly, the right to tell theirs is the individual who claims an allegation was made. The other parties to the issue, be it Alberta Health Services, the provincial government, whoever you want to say it is, have no right to talk about those issues. I have no right as a citizen, and certainly no right as an elected official, to make any comment whatsoever on yours or anybody else's mental stability or not. I mean, I honestly don't have that right. And And if I were to do that, and I think if many people were to do that, we would do that only out of concern for friends. But to do that as a malicious thing, or to reveal some file document that says, oh, something, whatever, so and so is,
So what's all this about intimidation? I mean, is there some truth to it? Where do you think this is going to? I mean,
well,
where
and,
is it?
and sadly, it becomes part of the same issue. It becomes part of the same thing where people take their own perception and roll it forward. And then their perception becomes ultimately kind of their reality, I guess. But I mean, you can't function as an agency, an institution, or a government for any period of time if that's your modus operandi. It doesn't work. Yeah? People go and they don't come back. And while is there an organization of 90,000 people likely that somebody feels that way? Yeah, there's probably that for sure. I wouldn't have any question about it, just because of the number of people involved. Does that diminish their concerns? Not at all. But does that necessarily mean that their concerns are shared by everybody in the organization? I'd have to say no, it doesn't.
But is this going to fireball into something bigger? Do you think this issue, this attack by the opposition on the Conservatives, there's something more that's lurking there that's going to just keep coming out?
Well, the elephant in the room is Dr. Sherman made some allegations in the House, and he said that people were paid hush money and
Yes.
made this other allegations. And it's been very well discussed, and none of those have been proven. He hasn't brought forward. He brought forward no evidence with respect to the things that he actually said in the House. He brought forward a bunch of stuff on a bunch of different things, but with respect to what he said, he didn't bring anything forward. And so it's really, to be blunt, it's in my mind, frankly, a bit of a slap in the face to the medical community to have to put up with, some sort of claim like that, because it casts a shadow not just over the one particular, issue or the one particular individual involved. It casts a shadow over all of them, and it's a shadow that they don't deserve. So, if there's an issue, the Health Quality Council is in on it, and they'll find it. But
Okay, so let's move on. And
Okay.
I'd like to talk about another reader comment I came
Sure.
across. It says, people seem to forget that companies, which means private companies,
Yeah.
need to raise certain profit margins to remain viable.
Yeah.
If not, they cut the workforce size of the company or simply close down
Yeah.
or move to Asia, where they can conduct business at a substantially lower overhead. Unions are to blame for this in large part, as over the years they got greedy and demanded more and more. They have only themselves to blame for jobs and manufacturing going to the Asian countries at a fraction of the cost. Do you believe that? What's been said?
it's not that black and white. There's always a kernel of truth in those types of things. But I think it's a very broad generalization to blame a labor organization or to blame unions for sort of the export of manufacturing jobs. I mean, and this goes back to that resource extraction question. I come out of the forest business.
Yeah.
I ran a sawmill for quite a number of years. I worked for a number of different forest products companies, some union, some non-union. The wages are very much comparable between the two organizations. And ultimately, what drove our business model was not so much the cost of labor, it was frankly whether or not we had ready markets for the product. If you're in the business of manufacturing, a widget that's easily replicated or easily manufactured in some other country that has a lower labor cost, then probably that's what's going to happen.
So where does your party stand on this issue? I mean, in terms of...
In terms of which, the union part of it?
Yeah, the union, because we see ambivalence there. You have the typical education thing, and I don't want to keep repeating it. That seems to be whipping a dead horse. But, it's just an example of how you guys, your core, that's not your core principle. You said that you would freeze bonuses, and then you went back as soon as the election year, as you entered an election year, and you retracted and you went forward. There's nothing wrong in that, but the point is, are you again changing policy and your core principles as a party because you have an election year in front of you?
Oh, I absolutely don't think so. I mean, you always are. You're always aware of what public perception is, but I mean, you have to stand on the record that you run. The public are not foolish. They're very, very, very smart. And so if they perceive that that's what you're doing, then you're going to get in trouble for doing it. But in Alberta has some sectors in the province are heavily unionized, some sectors are not. I mean, my own sector, the one that I seem to lean towards the most because of my background and training, is construction, for example, and we have in my constituency, both the open shop, the alternative union, and the building trade union organizations, and they work very well together. I mean, it's all, and certain types of organizations are able to deliver certain types of things. So, you can't just flop a policy because you have an election year coming up, because the cycle times are a lot longer than that, and frankly, people are smarter than that.
Yeah, but the basic wages are still the same, and BC went ahead and it scored a point on other provinces by increasing just recently the minimum wage.
Okay.
And the basic wage or the minimum wage for certain professions remains the same. It's and those are the people who need help the most.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
Why haven't you done anything for them?
Well, no, that's actually Thomas Lukaszuk, the Minister of Employment and Immigration, had responded to some commentary about this very issue in the House recently last fall, and an all-party committee sat together and they're actually still in the process of making some recommendations. Again, it's always, you ask yourself, well, who are the people that are earning this particular type of money or working those particular kind of jobs, and is it a question of increasing the wage, or is it a question of supplementing them in some other way? If you go to buy a cup of coffee or a sub sandwich, you as a consumer have a price point. And in fairness to the person that owns that shop, he has the right to make a living, and probably labor is one of his bigger costs. So for him to increase his labor costs, quite likely makes his particular munchie uneconomic, so he can't produce it. But he can't raise his price because you, as a consumer, won't pay it. So
but
then he's got a challenge. Right?
But the same argument goes for the government.
Yeah.
You are hiring thousands upon thousands of people.
Yeah.
So if it's inefficient for $1 to go up as far as minimum wage goes, how come you're raising 4%, 6% for other people? How come? Why don't you see the model there? So does government need to get out of business is my question to you. So why do you keep hiking it and make it? Yeah, but the logic. Let's look at the logic. You're telling me that it's not profitable. It's not competitive enough for that coffee shop owner to hike that $1 for 5 people.
Yeah.
So how come the government is hiking 4%, 5% in salary increases at a time when we are running deficits?
Okay, well, because the only sector that is in fact has had wage increase adjustments like that are the school teachers. So the school teachers' collective agreement was established.
Doctors as well.
Well, and doctors as well. A doctor doesn't, in fairness to doctors, a doctor doesn't get paid a wage. A doctor can bill, for example, general practitioner. A general practitioner can bill $500,000.
But the subsidies in terms of subsidies in terms of infrastructure, in terms of other services provided. So if he would have to open up his own shop, he would have to pay a tremendous lot. So there are subsidies too. Well, so the government is not efficient enough. So let's face it, we need a new model of government. The government needs to get out of our lives.
That's kind of a leap. You can't go from talking about one thing with regard to...
but it's so correlated. Well, if you think that's not efficient, how come you don't use the same yardstick for the government institutions that you run?
We do use the same yardstick for government institutions, and frankly, the Alberta Medical Association is in discussion right now. They're in negotiation as we speak. I'm not going to tell you what the results of that are because I don't know. But with respect to the provincial civil service and with respect to other than teachers, frankly, and that was a collective agreement decision that was made. It was a commitment we made. We're going to honor it. But with respect to those, there hasn't really been a whole bunch of change in any of the others. People whose increases are tied to inflation don't get any particular kind of increase at all because, frankly, the inflation rate has been stable. But
it's been about 1%. Now it's higher.
It's moving up a little bit. Well, we're going to see some more movement this year. Food is going up, and fuel certainly for sure. But I don't want to get into the basket of goods and services that makes up inflation because it just gives me a headache. But it's because it's always that's so subjective. But we don't apply a different measure. But for example, with regard to minimum wage, that particular thing's being worked on. People are talking about that stuff now, and it's an all-party committee, so everybody's represented at the room. Both, the NDs, the Liberals, and they're all having the conversation. And I haven't seen the results of that, But Thomas is, Minister Lukaszuk is an honourable guy. He made a commitment; he'll live up to it.
I owe you a debt of gratitude in my personal, my present avatar is thanks to you, and I want to thank you once again. I mean, that's between you and me, but I want to thank you for that.
You and me and everybody in the internet.
And
come on.
Everybody in the internet. But I want to thank you once again, a second time, for being here with us. Thank you so much.
It's a lot of fun, and thank you, Sunita, anytime at all. I'm more than happy to be here.
Thank you so much.